So we'll just give it a few moments for more folks to get logged on here. I see that the attendees are coming in right now.
Larissa, should I share my PowerPoint splash screen now or just once Lakita begins?
Yeah, we can start share that PowerPoint once Lakita gets started.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Larissa, you don't want me to do the opening, like, thank you and everything for, I got it right.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
you do
yes.
that first. Okay.
I'm going to do it publicly, but thanks for inviting me, Congresswoman.
Oh no, I want to do more of this stuff together.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
need to. Yeah. And we got to talk about earmarks because,
Oh, I heard.
yeah,
I've not been there when that happened, so we didn't have it
yeah.
on the state level either. So
So it's over 150 members who've never had
yeah,
earmarks. So.
so we have a briefing with all our local electeds, and I was trying to figure out, like, how do I explain it though? Because then I don't want it to be like an open end, like it, you know. I just want to make sure that we're not over promising or creating
Right.
even more. Yeah. Okay. I think I just shared it with myself. That's good. There it is.
So we have about 7 attendees on right now. Oh, it's still growing. It looks like we're getting a few more folks on. So we can either wait for a few more folks to come on, or we can go ahead and get started. Oh, 9 now. Looks like they're all kind of making their way in with the links and everything.
I mean, it's up to you if you think I could just start. I mean, some of the stuff it's more important what Sean and Deputy Director Henderson has to say. So thanks SBA for doing this again with me. I learn as much as my small businesses do.
Yes. We couldn't do it without you.
So we now have about 10 folks on. We had a total of about 40 or so participants actually register. So I'm actually in the process of just making sure folks receive the confirmation email with the link. So if we want to just give it a few more minutes, then we can go ahead and get started.
Just a point of order, we'll do our intro and then it'll go right to you all, right?
Yeah. I used to think it's so funny. There's a whole language in Congress, but now I'm doing it. I have a point of order. I yield. I say I yield I yield the rest of my, I yield all the time. I'm like,
Reclaiming my time.
oh yeah.
The new one will be, are you okay? That was hilarious.
That was really sad. It was like, one of our colleagues was upside down in committee.
I
I
don't even
saw
know how to
that. I
do
saw
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And yeah, she said, "Are you okay?" He said, "No, I just can't figure out how to turn it around."
And then, I don't know who said it. It wasn't Chairwoman Waters, but she said, somebody said, at least you're not a cat. I thought
Yeah.
that was funny. Yeah, this week we are reviewing everything the committees did last week, and then we're voting next week just on all of them together. All right, Larissa, I got your text. All right, we're gonna start. Well, thank you everyone so much for being with us. I'm sure you've been hearing some of our informal conversations, but good evening, and thank you to all the businesses between the 13th and the 14th district participants and those that are participating in the webinar. I really appreciate it. I want to thank all the SBA leadership for continuing to be so responsive to us. And of course, my partner in Congress, Congresswoman Lawrence, for being part of this really important event and addressing some of the small business community's needs throughout both of our districts. I know that all of our small businesses across our districts are still facing a great deal of challenges and are doing everything they can to keep their doors open during this pandemic. We also know that there's still much work to be done by passing more COVID relief resources to all of you, especially our most vulnerable businesses, specifically our minority and the really what I call my mom and pop small businesses, so that you all receive an opportunity to receive the first and second round of the PPP program. And I know Congresswoman Lawrence will talk a little bit about her leadership in making sure that especially, again, our communities of color are getting access to those loans as well. It is essential and necessary for all of us to continue to advocate for the necessary resource and funds. And I ask all of you in partnership. Much of the small businesses don't realize when they call my office and they hit a wall or are hearing different things from the banks or different things about how things are being processed, it really does help my team and I to go back and ask my colleagues to make the adjustments. And so you'll see some of the changes that you all asked for is in the COVID relief package that you're going to see passing soon, hopefully, and onto the desk of President Biden. So again, thank you so much to Congresswoman Lawrence for joining me and the SBA team. With that, I would like to hand it over to Congresswoman Lawrence for a few words before we hand it over to our SBA folks and to go through their presentation on how they can help small businesses in our district.
I want to thank everyone for participating. I really do appreciate Congresswoman Tlaib for inviting me to do this small business webinar. And a special thank you to you and the SBA representatives for taking time out of your schedule to be here today. It makes a difference. We know that this pandemic has disproportionately impacted communities of color on both a health and economic platform. We are so proud to represent Detroit, and we've been labeled the comeback city. Well, that comeback has been on the backs of small businesses, which the majority are women and minorities. And so we recognize that these small businesses owned by people of color, especially Black Americans, have been seeing a higher rate than those of closings than those of white Americans. Without federal aid, many of these small businesses think they may be shut down for good. We cannot let that happen. Myself, Representative Tlaib, and the entire Michigan congressional delegation has been fighting to get resources and relief for our small businesses through the PPP program. In the last Congress, we passed bills to fund, strengthen, and improve the PPE so that small businesses, particularly those owned by people of color, can get access to this relief. And I know that they'll be talking about this, but I am a executive member of the Congressional Black Caucus, and we fought to include the inclusion of minority-owned banks and banks in the credit unions, and where the access to relief through the PPE would be accessible to the Black and small business community. In previous bills, we've allocated PPP funding for small and medium-sized banks, community lenders, and CDFIs. These actions were intended to ensure that our small businesses owned by people of color, women, and veterans had access to it, and they were not left behind. We need to continue this targeted approach. Currently, Congress is working on another stimulus package, as my colleague, Congresswoman Tlaib mentioned, President Biden American Rescue Plan to provide our small businesses and entire community with the relief they need. One of the things that I put forward, I've reintroduced my bipartisan bill to provide small businesses with tax credits up to $25,000 for the purchase of PPEs. Why is that important? If you're a barbershop, if you're a restaurant, if you're a beauty salon, and you had to reconfigure your small business to be able to accommodate your public, even on a limited basis, your grocery stores that are small grocery stores, that you should get a tax credit for that. So I've introduced that. It's just one of the many small steps that we're taking to ensure everyone gets back to work. We are fighting for the vaccine so everyone will live and we can get our economy back to work. I want to thank Representative Tlaib again for inviting me. We will get a bold relief package passed. We are committed to that with the administration, the House, and the Senate, that will help our small businesses, our family, our schools, and community. And President Biden American Rescue Plan does exactly that. I want everyone to stay warm, make a snowman in my honor. I'm making one for you all. Stay warm, stay safe, and I hope to see you all soon. And thank you again, Congresswoman Tlaib, and I turn it back over to you.
Oh, thank you. I'm really pleased that we have some incredible advocates within SBA to help us. Acting District Director, Ms. Henderson, has been with the US SBA program for about 8 years, and she's here with us tonight. And as well as Sean Gray, who's our Economic Development Specialist within SBA, and has actually known him personally to working with some of our small businesses throughout the city of Detroit and southeastern Michigan. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to them for their presentation, and please use the chat or the Q&A section for any questions or any issues that come up during the presentation. We want to be able to answer all of those. Thank you so much.
Oh, gotta unmute. Can you hear me? Hi. Thank you, Congresswoman Tlaib and Lawrence. It is a pleasure to be here. Before I turn it over to Sean, who's going to go over our programs and services and talk about the PPP, I just wanted to let the audience know that the Small Business Administration has been here before COVID, and we're going to be here after COVID. We work for you, and we want to make sure that you are able to get the necessary training, counseling, and funding at this important time. We have what we call the economic, the EIDL, and we have the PPP. I want to stress, as the Congresswoman stated, that we want the underserved to get funding. We need you to fill out applications, get with a lender. If there's an issue with getting a lender, reach out to us. We can help support you in locating a lender. Sean Lewis, this is actually his territory, the Detroit area. So he is a point of contact at all times. You can always reach out to me. But getting the lending to you, helping you navigate the coronavirus relief is what we're here for. And we'll try and answer all of your questions. We're going to give you a lot of information. If we can't answer your questions, we'll definitely get back with you. But Sean, go ahead, and because he has some great information.
Thank you so much. And thank you as well, Congresswoman Tlaib and Congresswoman Lawrence, for having us. Hopefully you guys can hear me. I feel really quiet right now, but it could just be me.
Sound great.
Okay, thank you very much. So really excited to be here. As Congresswoman Tlaib mentioned, this from the CARES Act to now, these programs have gotten so much better and all encompassing. And one thing I tell people is that if they have a problem with the current or an issue with the current legislation and the current policy, you know, the next iteration has caught it. Almost each time we've had a new iteration, the problems that we've heard from business owners or the concerns that we've heard have been addressed. And I think to Congresswoman Lawrence's point, some of the things that we are hopeful will get an opportunity to work on in the future is making sure that folks in underserved communities have better access to opportunities like this. Very rarely will you see an opportunity to borrow based on losses, such as the Economic Injury Disaster Program, or an opportunity to borrow at such a low rate in the case of the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program or the Paycheck Protection Program, which is in effect a grant if it's forgiven. So if you apply, if you meet all of the criteria, it's effectively, especially now that they have changed the tax status, the effect is basically a grant. So we'll talk about more of the policy. I'm going to get through some basics about SBA programs, and then we'll go right into Paycheck Protection Program and Economic Injury Disaster Loan stuff, as it were. So the SBA, typically some of the three things that we focus on typically are contracting, capital, and counseling, as we call it. So during more normal times, we are trying to help make sure that you have access to capital and you don't just have to have a rich uncle to get money to start your business. The reason I say that is because we offer guaranteed loan products. So a guarantee is basically when you take out a loan for $100,000, typically a bank is going to say, okay, you bring in, or I'm sorry, if you have a project that's a $100,000 project, the lender is going to say, okay, great. We're presuming have $10,000 or $15,000, right? And you say, yes, we hope. And then they say, great, no problem. You bring in that $10,000 or $15,000. Now we just need $85,000. We'll lend you the $85,000. But guess what? What do you have that's worth $85,000 that we can attach the debt to? And, you know, I mean, if you come from a certain side of town, you say, oh, my house is worth $300,000 of equity. So sure, you can attach that $85,000 in debt to that. Now, if you come from potentially a different side of town, you say, well, I don't have anything that's worth $85,000 to promise you. So what happens in that case is you, presuming you meet the other criteria for an SBA guarantee, can tap into a 7A or 504, and those are just codes of the law, loan that would then provide the SBA's backing or guarantee for the remainder of your loan that you don't have coverage for. So basically, where if you were a startup business, typically microloans are where you would start in the SBA lending sort of ecosystem. Microloans are typically overseen by mission-based lenders. The important thing about mission-based lenders is that they are not necessarily profit-driven. So they lend in situations where a bank or other entity may not. So a microloan, typically if you need in the $5,000 to $50,000 range, is a great place to start. We have a great microlender in the area at Seed Lending, which is based out of the Great Lakes Women's Business Council. I'll have some contact information for some of these folks in just a couple slides. And then if you are not a startup business, if you're an established business and you're looking to borrow for working capital and other expenses, you may be eligible for a 7A guarantee loan. And I have some of the specs about 7A loans here on the screen. And you can review this. Hopefully, I think there'll be a recording provided of this and you'll be able to review this information. These are loans that you would get from your lender. So your Chase, Huntington, Citizens, et cetera, you would get that loan in partnership with the bank that you may already be banking with. The 504 loan is typically a loan you would get for fixed asset financing, so your property, plant, and equipment. The other thing that, one of the other 3 points that I talked about that the SBA works in is contracting. So we want to make sure that your small business has access to the contracting opportunities with the federal government. The federal government of the United States is the world's largest buyer, largest customer. And one thing to think about is that there are lots of different sizes you can be at and do business with the federal government. There's agencies like ours, which in Michigan, we have around 10 or 12 employees, the SBA. And then there's, of course, Department of Defense, which has millions and millions and really large contracts around the country. So there's all types of opportunities to do business with the government. And we try to provide a conduit to helping you understand how your business can benefit from those. We also have programs that help historically underutilized businesses and also disadvantaged businesses do business with the government. And there's lots of opportunities to learn more about that. You can go to certified.sba.gov to learn more about these programs and determine if you're eligible for those programs. The last piece, and a very important piece of what we offer, is counseling. So when we talk about counseling, and I come from working at the Small Business Development Center for years, and so I got to work with people very hands-on, no cost to the business owner. You can call and get guidance and support. Also, we have SCORE, for example, which is the Service Corps of Retired Executives. So if you need mentorship, you can get mentorship. If you need counseling, you can get counseling. If you don't know the difference between mentorship and counseling, you can give me a call and I can sort of help you understand what type of assistance might best suit you. Here's a list of all the resources that we have across the state. Well, really, particularly I tailored this for Southeast Michigan and sort of Detroit and Oakland County adjacent areas. But these are some of the great resources. We're very fortunate to have the Veterans Business Outreach Center very close to us in Flint. And that is a great resource if you're a veteran to understand what you in particular are entitled to. And they're pretty close to us because they actually serve, I think, 4 or 5 states, and they're right here in our backyard. So lots of resources to reach out to. You can come back to this slide, phone numbers and emails and websites as well. Now I'll go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes, as it were, and we'll talk about an overview of the COVID-19 economic aid for 2021. We'll talk about where we are, what the current status of PPP and EIDL is, also information on the grant program details. So that will be the Targeted EIDL Advance and the Shutter Venue Operators Grant, and hopefully cover some things that are important for each and every one of you. Again, it's going to be very rare that you find a program that forgives a loan, let alone that lends on losses. So these are 2 very unique programs, the EIDL and Paycheck Protection Program. So I hope that we can encourage you to consider applying or trying to apply. And also I'll provide my information at the end of this presentation if you have specific questions. So this is one slide I really like that's new in our PowerPoint, and it actually is really helpful because when we start talking about EIDL as an acronym or PPP, it gets really confusing. And now there's some new acronyms such as the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, or SVOG, that we're looking forward to. And then also the interesting point at the top of this slide, you notice there's loan programs and grant programs, and they sort of converge and are all over the place if you aren't sure or if it hasn't been explained to you. So hopefully this diagram will help you understand what these programs, how these programs interact. So the Paycheck Protection Program is an economic aid via a forgivable loan, which effectively allows you to spend a minimum of 60% of the loan on covering your payroll, and the additional 40% or up to 40% on covered eligible expenses. We'll talk a bit more about what covered eligible expenses are, but typically we're talking about payroll costs, rent, mortgage interest, utilities, and other operating expenses. The other interesting point that we have, or program that we have that has been retained, has been the debt relief program. So if you have a 7A or 504 loan or a microloan, the SBA is making your payments for you. And that is a great help to many businesses who, of course, are trying to survive this pandemic and make sure they can keep people employed and keep the lights on. The Economic Injury Disaster Loan is effectively a loan from the SBA designed to provide working capital and economic relief to businesses that are experiencing a temporary loss of revenue. Now, this is a really unique experience or opportunity, again, because you're usually not going to have someone want to lend to you on losses, and you're typically not going to get a 3.5% interest rate on that loan. And then you also would have typically a 30-year term on that loan. So that's a great opportunity. Now, it's not a loan that you could use to grow your business necessarily, but it is a survival loan, and it's a really great opportunity if you have had losses.
And don't forget to mention 2.75 if you're a nonprofit.
Yes, that's correct. Yep, for nonprofits. It's another, I mean, another example of a loan that does, is sort of a
Yes.
unicorn loan where
Mhm.
typically not going to see that opportunity.
Yeah,
Uh,
and just Sean, and for, I see some of my local elected folks on, this means churches, many of our churches are
mm,
501c3 status. We got a lot of requests from those faith-based organizations.
Mhm.
Many of our folks that even run food banks and things of that nature, they could apply.
Mhm.
that's very much true. Thank you.
And just another quick interjection, Sean. If everyone listening, if you go to sba.gov/coronavirus relief, everything that he just showed you will come up, and it's almost you can go to one page and access all of this information we're sharing with you today.
Yeah, thank you so much. So so there are some changes in the Paycheck Protection Program from the CARES Act to the Economic Aid Act. And so I'm going to try to cover some of those changes. Thank you both very much for that. So the Paycheck Protection Program basically expands Paycheck Protection Program eligibility and how funds can be used. Borrowers can now select a cover period between 8 and 24 weeks. Again, as I mentioned, this program has gotten better and better as it has been tweaked. And so we greatly appreciate all the work that's gone into that. Also allows for deduction of expenses covered with forgiven Paycheck Protection Program debt on federal taxes. So one issue that some borrowers under the previous iteration or the first iteration of Paycheck Protection Program had was that the guidance from the IRS was that the forgiveness was effectively a type of income, which then sort of throws your balance sheet off. But this actually allows you to have a counterbalancing balance sheet entry where you would basically put in the expenses, so it would effectively cancel out the forgiveness, if that makes sense. And so that's a really good change. Also, it updates the simplified forgiveness form, which we are still looking forward to seeing. So the loans under $150,000 have a simplified process, whereas loans above that and up into the millions will almost certainly have a more rigorous audit and different process from the easy forgiveness process that smaller businesses will have. Another important point is that the Paycheck Protection Program no longer subtracts any money you receive via the EIDL advance from your Paycheck Protection Program loan forgiveness amount. We'll get more into the detail of that as well as we go. So if you did not apply for the Paycheck Protection Program under the CARES Act, then you are currently considered a first draw PPP borrower. So if this is your first time seeking a Paycheck Protection Program loan, you have benefits of all the things that we talked about. So covered eligible expenses are expanded. So now also instead of using, I think the old model was a 75-25 model, now you have a 60-40 model where you can go 60%, as low as 60% of the loan amount can be utilized on payroll, and the other 40% can be used on utilities. So it's important to keep your staff retained, but it's also important to keep the lights on and to spend money on keeping your employees safe. And that's something that Congress has recognized in moving this forward and making this tweak. So borrowers can also select a covered period length between 8 and 24 weeks. This is important because when the initial iteration of this program rolled out, you had 8 weeks, which for some people meant that their disbursement period and their covered period was effectively while they were still closed. So now you can select a window anywhere between 8 and 24 weeks that you're going to deploy these funds. And that's very important for some people too, if you have a seasonality to your business. So for example, if you're borrowing right now and you really plan to get going in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 months because your business has a seasonality, that's an important point to note, that you can still deploy these funds 3 to 4 or 5 months from now. And that's a very important change. Certain borrowers can request an increase to their Paycheck Protection Program loan amount. That's certain borrowers who have a seasonality. I can answer more questions about which borrowers can request an increase in their first PPP. If you want to give me a call, I'll have my number in here. But you have to have been in business by February 15th, 2020. You must also apply for this Paycheck Protection Program loan before March 31st or until congressional appropriations are exhausted. Of course, I would always say do not wait. If you can get into the queue now, please do so. One thing I do want to call out for Detroit-based businesses is that you should consider visiting the DetroitMeansBusiness.org website. One thing that I've been really glad to see is that the city of Detroit really is excited about PPP and they are actually getting nonprofits to help them in providing you with the support you need in applying for PPP. That's one thing I can't do is walk you through a PPP application, but they are actually getting support from a few different nonprofits in Detroit to help you walk through the application process. That's really great.
Yeah, and we'll also include, for those that are outside of the city of Detroit, like Wayne County. Wayne County also has some great resources that we'll share in the chat as well with that team.
Okay. And
I also wanted to include Oakland County too. So that's inclusive of all of Wayne County, Oakland County, and Detroit.
For sure.
And
Thank
real
you very
quick, I was just going to say that although the PPP is for those who were in business February 15th and prior, if you started your business after that, it's not available for you, but we do have other resources, as they mentioned, and other resources we can tell you about that are either from the state or other entities. So don't feel you can't reach out to the SBA. We have a list of those grants or other things that others are offering.
Thank you. So just a couple more notes on First Draw Paycheck Protection Program. So newly eligible groups in this round of the Paycheck Protection Program: housing cooperatives, destination marketing.
Sean, you're sounding a little muffled right now.
Uh-oh, it may be my internet. I don't think.
Oh, there it is.
Okay, great. Also, 501c6s, chambers of commerce are a good example of that, and certain news organizations. Still eligible, of course, sole proprietors, independent contractors, self-employed individuals, business entities, 501c3s, 501c19s, and tribal businesses. Now, one area that we had in the first round of Paycheck Protection Program that was an issue was that some solopreneurs or sort of sole proprietors, missed out on the opportunity because they presumed they had to have employees. And so I want to make sure anyone who is here who is their only employee understands that you are absolutely eligible for this. So a second draw Paycheck Protection Program loan. So let's say if you took advantage of the program, the first round under the CARES Act, and you'd like to take advantage this time around, there are some new criteria that you have to meet to be eligible for this round of Paycheck Protection Program. You have to have 300 or fewer employees. You have to have suffered a 25% reduction in gross receipts over comparable periods as well. So if you meet those two things, and there's another one actually I'll cover. If you meet those two things, for most borrowers, your maximum loan amount is going to be 2.5 times your average monthly 2019 or 2020 payroll costs, up to $2 million. For borrowers in the accommodation and food services sector, again, this is targeted at helping the hardest hit businesses. You're going to be able to draw 3.5 times your average monthly 2019 or 2020 payroll costs, up to $2 million. The second draw applicants have to submit also information that indicates or that allows us access to tax returns and submit other forms as well. So there's a little bit more scrutiny this time around is one interesting thing. Whereas the first time around, the program was really sort of geared for speed and getting the money out the door. This time around, they're doing sort of some checks on eligibility up front. And if that's slowing the process down a little bit, the ironic thing is that it's actually a little bit better, because what was going to happen was if you received a Paycheck Protection Program loan in the first round, before there was a check for eligibility or where there was a missed opportunity to check your background for, let's say, for example, federal debt obligations or other issues, it may have impact on your forgiveness process. So it's pretty important to get this done right the first time. And this time around, there is the time to make sure we get that done right the first time. So one example of making sure that you are able to show that 25% reduction in gross receipts, typically for most business owners, that's going to be your second quarter. For most people, the second quarter of 2020 was when you really saw a drop. But for some businesses, one challenge I've seen a lot is that business owners were not yet in business. In 2019, they didn't start until after mid-year. So that gives them sort of a reduced window to use to show the 25% reduction. There is an alternate test, however, so we can discuss that if you have specific cases or questions about how to show your 25% loss comparable quarter over comparable quarter. Another interesting thing is that you have to have used the full first draw PPP loan. So if you didn't use all of your money from your first round, you need to either go back and amend that with your lender, or see if there's a way to amend that with your lender before applying for a second round. So the first steps really are to find a lender who does offer Paycheck Protection Program loans. One thing I will say, and I think Congresswoman Lawrence mentioned this, that was great, was that they did focus on having minority lending institutions and community financial development institutions in the game early on before banks could actually even lend to you, which gave them an opportunity to support businesses that they are maybe in the community in a way, like I talked about with micro lenders who are sort of a little more mission focused as opposed to sort of typically being more profit driven. So it was really good to get them out there, and we've had great support from First Independence Bank and so many other CDFIs or community financial development institutions and minority depository institutions. So you can go to sba.gov/lender match to find lenders for many of our loans. One of the best things to do, though, I think, is to just go to sba.gov/PPP or sba.gov/paycheck protection. And you can actually, right there at the bottom of the page, you can type in your zip code and it will show you banks in your area that are doing Paycheck Protection Program. You complete the application. My guidance would be complete the application with one bank that you trust or like or are familiar with. Lots of people are hearing that they should apply at multiple banks, and that's actually not great advice, because what happens is you have to then withdraw your application. And the challenge with that is I've had people who applied so many banks, they didn't know where they'd applied. And then they called me and said, help me withdraw these applications. And I'm like, I don't know where the applications have been put in. So you want to typically pick a bank that is responsive to you, that you have some relationship with, because the difficulty is, if let's say if you do apply to two banks and one is not responsive, that bank that isn't responsive is going to have to be somewhat responsive to withdraw your application, right? So then it can create a delay, which would delay a bank that might really want your business from processing your application. So I would be cautious and thoughtful about how you apply. If you can apply at a credit union that you're familiar with, or a CDFI you're familiar with, or a minority depository institution that you're familiar with, I will say that in some instances their application load, at least from the ones I'm in contact with, seems to be a little bit lighter than some of the larger banks, which have thousands of applications. So if you know that you're going to need hands-on support, you may want to think about some of those other lending opportunities. So you
Great,
complete the
great point, Sean, because I wanted to say too, it's good if you have a relationship, but please understand the SBA does not have the authority to go to a lender, say if you think it's taking too long or it's this. We have no authority to tell a lender to do anything, because we've delegated authority to them to handle the PPPs. They determine eligibility, they do the certifications. And once they've done that and determined your eligibility, they send it to us. But we have no authority to go to them, because we get emails all the time. This banker won't do this, they won't do this, they're taking forever. We can't call a banker and say, process that quicker. So make sure that you get with a lender, as Sean said, that you know. If by some reason you don't know one, reach out to us. But that's been a big problem with small businesses going to lenders that they don't have a relationship with, and then it becomes a problem for them. And so try and reach out to us if you're having the difficulties finding a lender.
Yeah, and just Deputy Director Henderson, I know if you are having issues, you can also connect with myself, or if you're in Congresswoman Lawrence's office, primarily because I know we had a lot of complaints about, for instance, Bank of America, I'll say it, and Chairwoman Waters and Financial Services Committee took care of it right away. We also heard, some issues with other lenders. They're contracted out by us, to federal government. They're getting fees, y'all. This is your money to be able to work for you. Sean's smiling, but it's true. It's our money that they're supposed to be really working with all of you small businesses. And so even with those that do have a prior relationship with the lenders, I know for a fact that some have been denied or did not get priority because they're a nonprofit, or they're not as lucrative or large as some of the other those others that have bank accounts at the same location. So if you do have any struggle with that, my district director, Larissa, has been incredible advocate on your behalf and ourselves. Just let us know when those situations happen, but please know we can't apply for you, but you apply. If you're having any barriers, a wall goes up, you're kind of like, what's going on here? You let us know. And again, as a member of Financial Services Committee, I know other colleagues of mine is also hearing the same thing from local businesses that are struggling with some of the banking institutions, especially at the beginning. I know they're getting, obviously they know y'all are calling us now, so we're complaining, and then they're getting back into but again, we're getting another round. They might need that timeout again. So let me know, or Congresswoman Lawrence's office know, if you all have ever hit a barrier.
Thank you so much for that. And I also want to say,
Definitely.
if you are if you are anxious about the process, don't, maybe don't apply. So there are also some sort of online loan sort of or bank finders where you can put your name into the app or into the online tool and it'll find you a bank other than going to our website. I would be very cautious about that too, because some of those will, I mean, they'll put the loan out there and a bank or a lender will have it, but that lender may not necessarily be at all local to you, and they may not be very responsive to you. I have lenders, just to be very candid with you, that I reached out to about concerns that borrowers were having during the CARES Act, during the initial, I have lenders who never responded to me. So, so I would be cautious about sort of the online process. If you aren't familiar with how online loans work or comfortable with sort of that very email focused process, if you're gonna want someone to talk to you on the phone, I haven't seen a phone number for some of the online sources. So think about your smaller lenders, reach out to, the Oakland County, they have the Small Business One Stop where you can call them. They are an SBDC center as well. And you can reach out to the SBDC, you can reach out to SCORE, you can reach out to us, and we can try to get you connected to a lender or an opportunity where someone may be able to give you the hands-on support you would want.
Exactly. And never let a lender tell you that they can't give you an update or a status on your loan. Because if they can't give you an update or a status, then I don't know why they're lending. So don't ever let a lender tell you that. And if they do that, please give us a call, because we can, we can't make them do anything, but we can definitely reach out to them.
Thank you so much, Lakita. Lakita has said it all. Her candor is appreciated. The Paycheck Protection Program loans maturity. So if your loan is not forgiven 100%, and this can happen based on, if you ideally inadvertently misuse the proceeds, or if you were to, go above that or below the 60% threshold, there could be portions of the loan that may not be forgiven, ideally portions and not the whole thing. But the interest rate is fixed at 1%, which is not compounding, non-adjustable. There's no requirement of collateral or personal guarantees. There's no prepayment penalties either. And you basically would have a 5-year maturity. So that means that you would have time to pay the loan off, or to, basically, and there's also sort of a different bucket for people who borrowed from the the CARES Act program. There's sort of 2 different ways you can look at repaying that. Payments start basically once you know the Paycheck Protection Program loan will be forgiven, or how much of it will be forgiven, and the lender will notify you of that. If you don't apply for forgiveness, you're going to have to start repayment. But the important thing to remember is that repayments or payments, if you don't have a forgiven, start 10 months after the last day of your covered period. So if you selected a 24-week covered period where you're going to be dispersing those funds to your staff over 24 weeks, at the end of that, the last day of that, you can count out 10 months from there, and that's when you would start repaying your Paycheck Protection Program loan if it were not to be forgiven. In theory, and our hope is that we will see all of these forgiven. That's the best case. Paycheck Protection Program borrowers must apply for forgiveness through their lenders. So the lender submits the forgiveness decision to the SBA pursuant to you showing them that you're qualified for forgiveness. Some updates to this via the Economic Aid Act are the EIDL advances are no longer deducted from your Paycheck Protection Program forgiveness, which is important and very helpful for many small business owners. Also, expenses paid with Paycheck Protection Program funds are federally tax deductible. It also expands the expenses forgiven, which is an interesting thing, because one thing I noticed in talking to lots of CPAs is that they were excited about that because they did a lot of free work in quarter 2 of 2020, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, you mean tell me now they can pay me, and some, depending on what they're paying me for, it might be forgiven." That's awesome. So I saw a lot of CPAs excited about that, but also a lot of other services. So if you think about it, many of you will have had to start doing business online more often, and there are certain types of services that are going to be part of your forgiveness. And another really important point, again, protecting your employees, which is a huge point. Any investments you've made in protecting your staff and protecting your business in PPE and other investments are going to be part of your forgiveness as well, up to 40%. So also, as I mentioned, Paycheck Protection Program loans will not be federally taxable income. That's another important thing that a lot of people were worried about. The economic injury disaster loan is another one I want to cover. One thing to bear in mind with EIDL, slightly different from the Paycheck Protection Program loan in that you can use it for working capital and normal operating expenses such as continuation of healthcare benefits, rent, utilities, fixed debt payments. The really important point to make about these two things is you don't want to have an overlap in what you paid for with your EIDL and your Paycheck Protection Program loan. So if there is an overlap, what will happen is a portion of your Paycheck Protection Program loan may not be forgiven if you overlap these two things. So if you had a covered window for payroll of 24 weeks, and then for some reason you were also using EIDL funds and mixing those funds, you wouldn't want to do that. I'll just leave it at that. So the terms for these, as I mentioned, 3.75% for businesses, 2.75% for nonprofits over 30 years. Eligibility, basically qualifying small businesses, cooperatives, agricultural enterprises with 500 or fewer employees. This is what a program also that you apply for on our website. So you can go to sba.gov. There's a yellow banner at the top of the page. You can click through there and apply for EIDL right there on our website. So a pretty straightforward application. One new program to come out of the Economic Aid Act is the Targeted EIDL Advance. So this is a program where if you previously applied for the EIDL Advance, which was a grant of up to $10,000, Congress has gone back and made it more clear that they intended for it to be a grant of $10,000. In this instance, it is targeted at low-income communities and communities that have suffered a greater than 30, or businesses that have suffered a greater than 30% economic loss and have 300 or fewer employees. So how they're managing this, or how our agency is managing this, is that they are going back, reaching out to businesses that meet those criteria. So businesses in some markets that meet those criteria are receiving emails and or contacts and invitations to effectively indicate that they qualify for that targeted advance. And if you received, for example, when we initially issued the EIDL advances, typically if you had 2 employees, you got $1,000 per employee, so $2,000. But what they're doing is they're going back and to those companies that meet those 3 criteria, they're effectively giving you the full 10,000, making it the full $10,000 by saying, okay, you received 2,000, here's the additional 8. So they're making folks whole on that. Those who apply for an EIDL advance but didn't receive funds at all because the funds were gone are also part of the targeted advance due to pursuant to availability of funds. From what I've seen, I believe they're starting with the businesses that are in the low-income communities, suffered a greater than 30% economic loss and have fewer than 300 employees, and then they're moving to the businesses that didn't receive anything because funds were exhausted. So the SBA is actually reaching out to those who qualify for that program. So hopefully anyone on this call who qualifies will be hearing from us.
Yeah, actually, Sean, they actually started sending out emails on February 4th to those who didn't get the full funding. That's going to be the first wave. They're going to take care of those small businesses first. The second wave will be those who were told they were approved, but didn't get it because of the lack of the funding running out. And that's about 5 million small businesses.
Awesome. That's amazing number. So, and then this is a slide that just sort of documents some of the things that they will request from you if you get that email, if you're qualified. The targeted EIDL advance as well. So this is a program that of course, you've already applied for. If you're eligible, you're going to be hearing from us soon. If you have a question about eligibility or when you'll receive an email, we don't have answers on that. They have provided this email address, targetedadvance@sba.gov. And if you believe you're eligible, you could reach out to that email. Again, unfortunately, I don't have particular answers on when you'll hear, but patience is always a virtue. So we'll hopefully.
Yeah, and just for all the participants, I know this is a lot of information. We actually are going to send out this presentation, but my team and I already put together a really nice like 2-pager of everything from the email, the contact, bullet pointed, specific, what each program does, who to contact, for all those that are asking about, how to, most of what I'm copying and pasting into the chat is from that 2-page document that has, again, it's very easy to read. You can share it with small businesses or with other folks as a resource. So just for folks to know, what you're seeing and being presented to you will be attached as a thing in an email follow-up. Especially since you're on here, that means you're registered. We have your contact information. We'll get that information to you.
So
we do have a couple questions when you're ready, Sean, but.
Okay, I'm trying to wrap up, I'm sorry. So there's another grant program here to talk about just really briefly. The Shuttered Venue Operators Grant is a program that we are looking forward to seeing a launch for. But it's a program that, because it's a grant, one thing you want to do is get registered in our System for Awards Management, or SAM. That's at sam.gov. So if you think you are a venue, typically a performance venue or theatrical venue, a museum or other venue that's been required to be shuttered due to the pandemic, and you think you qualify for the Shuttered Venue program and you meet the other criteria, one of the things you want to do is get in the System for Award Management, as that will be one of the requirements to receive the grant. So if you needed some prep work to do, if you think you're eligible for this program, that's the prep work, or that's the homework. But other than that, we'll move forward just so we can get.
And real quick, Sean, I'm going to have a presentation coming out soon about how to register for SAM, because most people are not familiar with SAM. So it'll give you, it's going to be real brief about how to register, because I know a lot of people are having difficulties.
Yeah. And so, as I mentioned, I'll keep it moving because I know we want to get to some questions. The SBA backed debt relief program, as I mentioned earlier, is paying your debts. If you have a 7A or 504 loan or a microloan right now, it's a great resource, and that's going to be able to take care of you for some period of time going forward. Then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, there's local resources as well to reach out to. And I want to make sure I leave time for questions, so I'll go to our slide as well. This is our Michigan District Office contact information. One really important thing I want to say before we get to the question and answer is to go to our website and sign up for our newsletter. I've signed up for every SBA newsletter in the country. And the funny thing is, so I get our Michigan ones, which are great, but I also get New York, I get Texas, I get the DC. And sometimes the stuff that comes out of DC, I'm sort of like, oh, wow, I don't know if I was 100% aware of this. So they put stuff out sometimes just a little bit ahead of us, but I would sign up for all of those. Another interesting thing that I've noticed is I get a lot of really good updates out of New York and Texas with lots of bilingual and multilingual information too. And many of those presentations you can watch from Michigan, just like you could watch it from New York or Texas. So that's my suggestion, is to go to our website, sign up for our newsletter. Best place to get fresh information on what we're doing, or give us a call at 313-226-6075. My phone number is 313-460-2700. You're welcome to give me a call as well.
Sean, can you read off those phone numbers one more time? Just
hit the slide. Keep it on that slide.
So our office phone number is 313-226-6075.
Mm-hmm. And real quick, I know we're running out of time, but the questions, we'll answer as many questions as we can till we have to close, but you keep asking your questions, and if they can just, Larissa, if you can just send them to us, we will definitely get an answer back and send them all back to you with answers.
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah, we answered a lot. So anybody that question, we've been answering them. We had a couple hands up, but now they're down.
I will, sorry, Congresswoman Tlaib, we did have a question earlier from Paul Phillips, who had a question about which specific programs were for nonprofit-based organizations, for 501c3s.
Oh, he can apply for the PPP. If he's a 501, did he say which one he is? If he's a 501c3.
Yes.
Yeah, nonprofits. 501c3s.
And EIDL.
Right? And
so he can apply for all of the above.
Yeah.
Two programs.
Most of the loan, EIDL and PPP, which is most of what we talked about.
Yep. Just want to make sure.
Any other questions? Feel free to post them in the chat, or feel free to use the emoji hand sign, which is below your screen, according to what I'm looking at, or feel free to use the Q&A feature as well.
But if we're waiting for hands, I just want to reiterate that keep in mind the PPP is almost like free money. Long as you can demonstrate. That's why I keep all of your.
I'm glad you said that, because I was like, all of it's getting forgiven. You guys are trying to say, well, you have to apply to get it forgiven, which is true. But.
Yes, just keep your paperwork, and if you can demonstrate that you've used the money for its intended purposes, it will be forgiven. It will be forgiven out, so please apply for the PPP. We've got till March 31st, but I think we'll have a little longer real soon. So keep in mind that that's free money, and this may never, these are strange times, but when have we ever been given free money?
Most of my
I mean, honestly, they called it a loan program, but at the beginning, and Congresswoman Lawrence knows, they were thinking of it as more towards a grant program, realizing it's not like that income for the business was going to come along, depending on what kind of business it is.
Exactly.
Marissa, did you want to clarify the last question?
Yes, so sorry about that. So Paul Phillips actually is asking about faith-based institutions. So which programs would be specifically for faith-based?
Actually, I can send him. We have actually a sheet based on faith-based frequently asked questions and a breakdown of everything. And that might be best if he see that. I can send him that information.
That would be wonderful.
Great. Have him can he put his email in the.
Paul, please feel free to share your email address in the chat, or I can also share it with the SBA team.
Yeah, and Paul, if you send it directly to the web conference name, that's Larissa.
I'll just make one more point. So one thing I just want to say to everybody, do not panic, apply for this program. If you are panicked or concerned, reach out to me or reach out to our district office. Our phone number is right here on the screen before you apply. If you're in a panic, don't do anything. Slow down and reach out to us so we can give you some guidance or some advice. The hardest cases I've seen in Paycheck Protection Program or EIDL are people who panic applied and maybe gave wrong numbers or bad information or applied at the wrong lender, because there's almost no way for me to help you walk that back. You really have to do a lot more footwork on your own if you've applied at sort of maybe bad fit for your needs as a lender.
He is correct. We get phone calls every day from small businesses who put the wrong account number, the wrong EIN, and those things really slow down the process. But I want to reiterate that the SBA has processed more loans in this past year than it has processed in 10 years. So you can understand the gravity of the amount of loans we're processing. So understand and be patient, but your loan will be moving. It may not be moving as fast as you want because we have checks on the front end now as well as the back end, but just stay patient, stay in touch with us, and you'll get through this and get your funding.
Yeah, and just for clarity, we had a lot of folks from the beginning of the pandemic, did not apply because there was just too much of a risk because it was considered a loan program. Know that a lot of that has changed. So a lot of it, it's basically become a grant program, but it still has a layer of bureaucracy and processes you have to follow. But it's really important for you to look at it from a different lens of a different program. Again, a lot of changes have been made primarily because small businesses came out and said, we didn't qualify, this doesn't work for us. And so a lot of those changes have been incorporated in the new program.
Right. And you're exactly correct. And as the program goes along, SBA is going in and tweaking it, because from the beginning, we only had so many days to stand this program up because it was get the funding out. So as we go along with the feedback, like you said, from the small businesses, it's steadily changing. Actually, this PowerPoint we're going to send you will be changing. It changes every few days, but the basic structures that you have here, it's all correct. So it's good to have, but the program is constantly changing.
So we have 2 additional questions, and just for the sake of time, because we are expected to wrap up at 6 and it's 6:05, and I want to be respectful of people's times. But we have 2 questions. I'm going to allow for Ms. Bonds to ask her question, and then we'll have another question from Ms. Reba Neely, which I'll read off. Ms.
Okay.
Bonds?
You're
Ms.
live now, Ms. Bonds. You can speak. You're unmuted.
I'm okay. I'm sorry. Okay. I had a question. Okay, so I had applied. This is the first time that I've applied. My business has been open for about 6 years, but I applied through Chase, where I have my business account through for multiple years. And when I applied for the PPP, they emailed me back and told me that I need to resubmit my application, and I am kind of freaking out because maybe I don't. I'm really good with the business part of my business, not with everything else. But I mean, I do my funds through Chase, so I'm not really understanding like where I'm going wrong.
Okay, did they give you a reason why they wanted you to resubmit?
They asked me for quarterly. I sent them my Schedule C. I don't know if that's what I was supposed to do, but they asked me for quarterly payroll. And a lot of the way I pay my employees is in different ways, but I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
No, it's not that you're doing anything wrong. They're just
Okay.
trying to figure out how much money do you need. So they're trying to
Okay.
see, because the payment protection program was created so you can retain your employees. So it's
Right.
very important that they know how much how much you're paying your employees, what are the benefits, are all. They're trying to figure out how much you need. So when your lender asks you to submit more information, it's not saying you're doing something wrong. It's just that they're trying, because SBA has delegated authority to them to make sure people are eligible. So they're just merely dotting their I's and crossing their T's, making sure that you're eligible, but also trying to figure out exactly how much money do you need to get you through that 8 or 24-week period, whichever you decide to use the monies for.
And one
So
thing
just-
too, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Sean.
One
Go
thing to
ahead.
bear in mind is that if you said there are sort of various ways you pay your employees, if one of those ways is 1099, you need to make sure that those people are applying for Paycheck Protection Program too. If they're independent, truly independent contractors, then those people need to apply for Paycheck Protection Program too. This is where this question
I
catches
hope
up.
people can hear that, because this is huge in my district. People are self-employed 1099 subcontractors. Huge.
Yes.
Yep.
So if you are,
Listen to Sean here.
yeah, if you are really a solopreneur where it's just you are the employee, or maybe you and a family member or other owner are the employees, and you take a draw, you need to show them your Schedule C, line 31. And the problem with that is if you have had a huge expense for some reason in 2019 and it's negative or zero, you don't qualify. But as long as there's income there, then they can use that to derive some amount that equates to what your income should be. However, anyone who is a 1099, they need to be applying on their own.
And Ms.
Right.
Bond, are you talking to someone at Chase, or is it just all through email and electronic? I'm just curious.
All through email and electronic.
Yeah,
I just scheduled a meeting for tomorrow.
Oh, did
Okay,
you?
you have a meeting
Good.
tomorrow?
I was gonna highly recommend that you talk to a human being and what? No, because they are getting paid fees, lots of money, to basically be able to walk you through this process. They're supposed to supplement and help you, like SBA is trying to right here. And so that's part of their fees and responsibilities of processing. A lot of that is to help their customers. So please make sure you're utilizing that as much as possible. And if you hit, again, I don't know if you're in my district or Congresswoman Lawrence's, but we're here to help if you do hit a wall, or if you're not understanding or feel like they're not helping you through it in a way that helps you. Because right now, if you're confused, I can't imagine, and you run a business, then something's on their end. I don't think you're doing anything wrong.
You may want to think
You say that.
if you get them on the phone, if you're having a meeting with them, if you still don't feel like things are resolved, I mean, you can also come to us for sure. But think about, while you got them, if you need to withdraw. And then if you're in, depending on where you are, we can connect you through our website or in conversation to other lenders who might have a more hands-on approach.
Exactly. And
So what he means is if they aren't doing what they're doing and they're not listening to you and they don't want to help you, we'll find you a different lender.
Yes, you say things so well. Thank you. And reiterate that the lenders are there to support you. They're supposed to be giving you guidance to help you submit your applications. If a lender tells you to call SBA, there's a problem. That's a problem. The lender should be walking you through it.
Thank you so much. That was such a good question and great answers to that question. So then last question, and then we'll wrap up for the evening with remarks from Congresswoman Tlaib. We had a question about what if you're not yet a 501c3, but are registered through LARA and through the Attorney General's office and have an IRS and EIN number for your nonprofit. Is there still assistance available if you are assisting those challenged during the pandemic with food, PPE, and et cetera?
So there's a number of types of assistance available to nonprofits. In the case of PPP and EIN, however, you need to be in operation by February 15th, 2020 to be eligible for most of the programming. I know, however, Accounting Aid Society has some opportunities to support nonprofits. Also, the Michigan Nonprofit Association has some resources for nonprofits. And then I'll for you if you weren't in business or up and operating before February 15th, 2020, I don't believe PPP or EIDL will be eligible.
So just to clarify, even if you have an EIN, but you were not yet operational during before February the 16th, 2020, you would not qualify for the SBA programs.
February 15th.
15th, I'm sorry.
Yes.
So yeah, so there are businesses, for example, that had all that documentation lined up, but they were pre-revenue, for example. So a nonprofit or a small business that was pre-revenue, or a nonprofit that had not yet launched or began sort of.
So Sean, just as somebody comes from the nonprofit sector, and I used to apply for nonprofits, so they're running their nonprofit organization, but it's actually the IRS and folks haven't sent. They're waiting. Like I have some on the federal level, they're still waiting to get their federal designation of 501c3. So when you say operational, so they're providing aid to the community. They're doing their work. That's operational.
We could definitely look into that.
I think it might be better to get Miss Neely's information to you all, and you can talk. Okay.
That would be great.
Yeah, because I just know a lot of nonprofit organizations, many of them, before they even apply to become like a legitimately,
they're already
in full operation, but they just started, they're getting donations, everything, but it's obviously tax the benefit of becoming 501c3 is for tax exemption purposes and all these other things as they get larger and provide more services to families. I just know a handful that literally they were doing what they're doing, but they never got the status because it was one of those things. It's like, now I got to feed people. I'll deal with the paperwork later.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Neely. Yeah. We will make sure we follow up with you, and I'll make sure that I get you, Ms. Henderson. I've sent you a couple emails
Thank you.
and the direct message. Yep, for follow up. Okay.
So thank you both. I think I can read your mind. Me and Larissa are. So go ahead, Larissa. Did you want to say something? Because I know you want me to wrap up.
Nope. You're right on. You're right on point.
Okay. First of all, thank you so much, Deputy Director Henderson. I hope you do stay with the SBA. I hope acting becomes permanent during as the Biden administration makes some final decisions. And Sean, is always great to have you as one of our specialists. And I love that I can translate what you're saying because you're trying to say it in a certain way. It's
federal way, right?
Yes, exactly. Federal way. Yeah. So, and thank you. Congresswoman Lawrence had a 6 o'clock standing appointment, but she is so pleased to be part of this and wants to continue again. Any small businesses in her district to please know that she has an open door policy. If you guys need any help, any support, let us know. Thank you for all the participants. Please know if you registered and we have your email, you're going to get a follow-up email from Larissa and I that is going to have those 2 pages that I talked about with the specific things that were shared in the chat, as well as the presentation that you have here, which as you heard from Deputy Director Henderson, she said that it's all on their website, but we're going to make it simple and attach it to the email. And then there was 2 follow-ups from folks that asked questions. We'll make sure to connect with you all. If there's, again, anything that you all need, please let us know. I'm already hearing from small businesses about, the process. Know that as soon as it opens up, and it's going to be fairly soon, hopefully, that if you have any hiccups, any issues, please come reach out to me. A lot of this stuff can be also administratively changed. Some of it was the last time around. So we don't know if it's working unless you all tell us. So please let us know. I know Larissa and I get super excited when we hear about our small businesses getting the EIDL program or PPP. I mean, we jump up like all excited because we know how hard it was to again go through that process. But thank you all so much for joining us. And please look out for any future seminars. We are having a town hall tomorrow night at 5 p.m. If you live in my district, you'll get a call directly, and it's a live telephone town hall about vaccinations in our district and what the processes will look like. So we want to help stop the spread of COVID and save lives. So please join me tomorrow at 5 p.m. You'll hear more information on our social media sites. But again, if you live in my district, you know that you'll get a call from me to say, stay on the line, and we'll have folks, 6 p.m. Thank you, Lisa. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. I got you. Town hall tomorrow, a live telephone town hall. We'll take questions. We have Wayne County Health Department with us. We have Detroit Health Department, which is also not only doing residents, but anybody that works in the city of Detroit, which is 70% of the folks that work in the city don't live in the city, are qualifying to get vaccinated at TCF. And we also have a representative from Beaumont Hospital, which services a lot of my Western Wayne and Downriver community. So please join me tomorrow at 6 p.m. Let's get vaccinated. Let's get questions answered. Let's make sure you all are taken care of. And again, thank you to SBA for joining us. Everyone, please have a good night and be safe.
Thank you.
You all.
My team, thank you to my team.
Yeah,
It's a great
team.
job. Thank you.